Hello people. So as I mentioned in my last community note, I wanted to do a video on original sin, the Christian mythological concept of original sin, and I wanted to do it from the perspective of New Age beliefs in general. So this will include life planning, spirits guiding, all that kind of stuff. A lot of what I talk about has as its basis the Law of One, which is this set of books which I've talked about in previous videos. So here we go. Let's start with nothing. And then this black line here represents the life path. And when it's just kept to the black line, this is the most neutral path that a person could follow. They don't do anything good. They don't do anything bad. Of course, this is purely theoretical. And now the Law of One gave us the concept of free will. But the concept of free will, I think I need to describe this because there are a lot of ideas of free will floating about. I mean, what exactly is free will, if you want to talk about free will? So free will, from my perspective, is not the ability to just go out and do anything. It's not being free from all restraints. And in fact, as is obvious in life, a lot of us have very many restraints to the result that we have very little choice in our lives, it seems. But free will is that we always have the decision to choose between the positive and negative. We can always do something good or something bad. And what that looks like might not be obvious to those outside of us, but within the limitations that we do experience, we can at least choose between good and bad. So let's put that in our little image here. The arrow up is the good direction and the arrow down is bad direction. Classic heaven and hell stuff, all very instinctive. And so the person has this life journey where they are moving along time. So going from left to right is time moving forward. And if they wanted to, if they did the most evil things they could possibly do at every single opportunity, then they would be going down on this dark blue line here. And if they did the best thing that they could possibly do in every single opportunity, they would be going on the purple line. And these are both hypothetically possible, but in real life, they're simply not possible. Remember that you have parents, friends, and life in general that constricts your choices to a great deal. So to have followed the purple line up, to have done the most perfect thing from the very earliest point, you would have to have parents that were exercising their free will in doing the best thing all the time as well, and you'd have to not diverge from that, which is almost impossible. But theoretically, it is possible. And to make sure that free will is honoured on this specific place where we live, the option always has to be there. So say I'm 5 years old, and if I had my complete knowledge of what I should be doing with my time, I would be picking up cards and memorising them, say I'm meant to be a really intelligent person. But I don't do that as a 5-year-old. But I always have the choice to do that. It might be a 5% choice, it might be a 10% choice, it might be a 1% choice, but I always have the choice. So the opportunity has to be honoured by the higher positive spirits. And if you look at this, say the person was to become non-neutral and positive at a fairly early point in their life, so this orange line is about 10 to 15, say, there's going to be far less energy to reach that purple line than if they are later in their life, where all the limitations from the neutrality has started to trap the person more. Now let's talk about karma. So this graph here is just the top half. We only need to worry about the positive side because we are mostly doing the positive, I would imagine. Let's talk about karma briefly, but not in the mystical, magical thinking sense, in a practical sense, but still including sort of metaphysical types of things. We're talking about karma as though there are spirits making practical considerations behind the scenes, and that there is guidance to our lives, and we're not dismissing the mechanics and just saying, oh, it works out because it works out. So let's say that this person here wants something that is good for them, something that is actually going to bring them improvement in their life. They're going up towards the purple line here. They're going up towards something positive, towards a true path, so to speak. But they're young at this point, and we all have a lot of errors when we're young, I think. So the thing arrives that we are manifesting, if you want to think of it like that, law of attraction style, but we're too young and we don't handle it properly. We have taken on responsibility without the strength and ability to back it up, or perhaps something random out in the world comes and wrecks it. Perhaps the other person becomes immature, for instance. So we have asked for this thing in our life, it has come into our life, and then the red arrow going down is us messing it up. And we have taken something out in the world that is basically positive, and we have damaged it a little bit. So, from the Spirit's point of view, we have been given something good, and we have wrecked it. So the Spirits in this case probably wouldn't want to give us something of the equivalent positive value if we haven't learned our lesson and we're likely to mess up the next opportunity. To add in another analogy, this person in blue here, or this job or whatever it is, might not have the negative karma of running into us. The next one at least, after the previous one got messed up. And so there is created a blockage. What I think it means to go over to Christianity is to release that ego, to use a term, I don't think that's an accurate term, but to release that sense of control over the world, the sense of trying to put everything together, doing it badly and messing the world up around you, and to rely on the positive spirits in order to move forward. So they can guide us outside of our neurosis to some extent, I believe. And for many of us, I think that is the best path for us. I think many of us are meant to be guided in this way. And a lot of us are probably guided even if we don't believe in said paradigms. And I think this mechanic here is the entire point. So the red arrow going down, messing with the blue stuff, is what all of our defense mechanisms create. If we're born into a family that, say, gets angry randomly at you and you are overly defensive and you are not accepting of others as you grow up when they are expressing real anger, which is legitimate and righteous, then that's another way that this problem is created. And it's another thing that we need to be guided out to an extent. I will talk about in another video when people are lying, when they're saying that they're being guided and such like that, when they convert to Christianity but don't do any of the virtuous things that those theories would suggest. And so that, to me, is original sin. If we think about this arrow going up here, we are born into a world that is almost a prison world in a sense, in that when you're born, you might be with abusive parents, and even if you're not, then those parents will have to deal with work issues and other crazy things going on in the world, and you will inevitably have to take on defense mechanisms. But we don't fully understand ourselves. We don't understand ourselves a great deal at all. Even the most intelligent of us, I would imagine. And that's where a lot of Christianity's ideas come in. It is said that we can't do good works ourselves because Jesus forgives us. Well, what that could mean is that we can't, with our own minds, put together how we actually help ourselves. But if we rely on guidance, then those things might be undone within us. And Christianity is hugely focused on not having guilt, because it says that Jesus has forgiven you for your sins, and perhaps that's because of the more negative entities running around. They are very good at making people sabotage themselves through unproductive guilt. I truly do think it's an extremely dangerous emotion. And since that emotion is basically unproductive, then the mythology that someone has forgiven you for your sins will make you more productive. And as long as you are earnestly being guided by Jesus and such, then you are doing the very best to push back against that message from your conscience as such. And there is no use you holding that guilt. So the mythology is you are forgiven for your sins. I'm not saying that people weren't forgiven for their sins and such like that. I'm not saying things about the actual events of Christianity. But I'm analysing Christianity from a psychological perspective as such. There is a lot more that I can say about various parts of this, including things about the actual Christianity itself, actual Jesus's life and all that, which has been talked about a bit in the Law of One. But that's not for this video. All I'm wanting to say is that the paradigm of original sin might be because of these things. And as well, I just want to make the point that I believe the positive angels have inspired a great deal of psychological research and theory as well, and it probably comes from the same source. So it's kind of the same thing here. The idea that you are born into parents that were probably dysfunctional in some manner, and that if you don't handle that in some way, your defense mechanisms as you grow up will mess up your life, is the same in both of these paradigms if you look at it as I'm describing it here. Anyway, thank you for listening.